What's up, guys? It's Ari coming at you with something different. I've been recently thinking about doing some read-alongs and reviews of books that I'm reading, and so I thought I'd just start with what I'm reading right now, and that would be Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I've heard so much about this series, and I'm super excited to just jump into this journey and see what it has in store, so let's get into it. Yeah, Dragonmount was a very interesting prologue, to say the least. It starts off with a guy named Luz Telamon? Luz Theron Telamon, that's what his name is. And he seems to be slightly off. He keeps looking for someone named Ilyena. Somebody appears, I believe from out of nowhere, a man clad in all black who seems to be taunting Luz Theron. Seems to be analyzing him, trying to understand what's going on. And Luz seems to be very excited to introduce this person to Ilyena. Long story short, it seems that Luz has some form of memory loss, as there is this dead body on the floor that he sort of walked over and past and hasn't really given any recognition to, and turns out that that person is the Ilyena that he is referring to. From there, it just starts to get real. I don't know how to describe it. Luz Telamon taps into something. I believe it's referred to at this point as the true source, and he taps very deeply into it. And he lights the air on fire, and then that fire liquefies into light. And then I believe that turns into a bolt that fires from the sky and then causes a massive earth-shattering explosion that destroys everything in the area. And then a mountain appears. I think that's what happens in the prologue. A lot happens that I'm probably going to jump back to it at some point as I start releasing more of these videos to try and give my analysis of what I believe is happening. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of see what's going on there, because there is a lot of lore dropping happening in this prologue, or rather a lot of terminology that's being dropped that we don't necessarily know at this point. So yeah, we move on to Chapter 1, An Empty Road. So we start with our main character, Rand, who is, quote, of marriageable age, as someone refers to him later, so I'm going to guess he's like 18 years old. He has red hair, he has a bow and arrow, and he is riding into town with his father, Tam Althor, who I really like. I really enjoy Tam's character. He's this stoic, you can tell he's in a great deal of control. And yeah, he seems like a very humble man. Rand and Tam are farmers who kind of live around this area called Two Rivers, and they're headed into a town called Emmons Field. Before they arrive, Rand notices that behind him there is this sort of black-clad figure on a horse who is staring directly at him, but when he tells Tam this, he does not seem to notice this figure. So yeah, we start off with this very interesting introduction to our characters, and very quickly we get dropped this strange Nazgul-esque looking figure who's sort of staring at our main character, and I believe he even says that he can feel this character's like hate towards him. So very cool stuff. They arrive in Emmons Field, and they are giving barrels to the mayor, and I believe the mayor's name is Bran Alvear. So they give him these barrels, and we find out that there is this festival that's happening in the town called Beltane. Again, a little reminiscent of Lord of the Rings. There's going to be fireworks and a bunch of celebration on this day, so everyone's very excited. We also get introduced to a character who is called the Wisdom, because there is this group in the town known as the Women's Circle, so I believe they're basically like the village council, and the head of that circle is called the Wisdom, and her name is Nynaeve. So we move on to the second chapter, and we are introduced to a character named Matt Ch.10. He is a friend of Rand's, and he's an interesting guy. I think I'm going to like what the future has in store for Matt Ch.10. He keeps being sort of advertised as this trickster, jokester character who's more laid back, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, I've seen lots of random pictures and things and such online of the Wheel of Time, and now that I'm starting to read it, it's kind of filling in these random little, oh yeah, that's this person, and I think that I recognize a picture of Matt that doesn't seem too spoilery, but I'm curious if he is the same person that I've been seeing, because if he is, I think I'm going to like him a lot. We move on to Matt and a kid named Ewan, who is younger, and Matt and Rand seem to kind of just let him tag along, but they just, I don't know, they're kind of mean to him, honestly. But eventually we get introduced to the characters of Lady Moraine and Lan. Moraine is supposedly an Aes Sedai, and Lan is a warder. So far, we don't know too much of what a warder is, but an Aes Sedai, I'm guessing, has to do with the One Power. Moraine seems very curious about Rand and Matt, and she doesn't seem very intrigued by Ewan, noticeably, and she basically asks them to tell her stories about them. Moving on to chapter 3, we are introduced to the peddler named Padan Fain. He comes with news about potential war in a place called Gale Dan, and there is apparently a war happening in Gale Dan. Padan Fain also indicates that there is this claimed dragon, and all these people that kind of hear him telling the story start talking about, oh, he's probably another false dragon. So it seems that this sort of title of dragon is kind of like the Avatar cycle, maybe, that it's like passed down in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I'm curious as to what that's going to mean. I mean, I've seen the titles of the Wheel of Time books, and I know that there's one called The Dragon Reborn, and it looks like Rand standing with a sword in his hand. So my assumption is that Rand is the dragon, but it also seems like people don't like the dragon. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to be a good thing necessarily in society standards to be the dragon. So my assumption is that whatever happened in the prologue probably has to do with that. We meet a character by the name of Egwene. Rand seems to like her quite a bit, but he also seems to suck at talking to women, so it doesn't go very well. But then our Gleeman arrives, and I was very excited when the Gleeman arrived because they kind of hyped up this Gleeman, and we're just saying that he was a very exciting person. I did guess that he was like a storyteller, though. So we move on to the 4th chapter. I believe it was titled The Gleeman, and they hang out with this Gleeman. His name is Tom, or Thom. I should look these up. But I believe his name is Tom Marilyn, and he basically just does a bunch of tricks. He juggles, does some cool stuff for them, and tells some fun stories. While he is doing that, a bunch of people just slowly start trickling into the place that he's performing in. Like, a lot of people just start coming in. It's pretty funny. Like, they fill into this place. But yeah, then it ends with Tam coming to his son Rand and telling him that they're basically going to go back to the farm tonight. But yeah, it ends with Rand's father, Tam, approaching him and telling him that they are basically going to go to the farm tonight, which was not previously part of the plan. And we move on to chapter 5, which was titled Winter's Night. And I thought, that sounds like it's going to be a very chill experience getting back home tonight. It does not go well. They basically get home, tidy up, and they get jumped by humanoid beasts called Trollocs, or Trollocs. Tam basically tries to defend Rand. Rand runs out of the house and out into this field and waits for Tam. Tam is fighting these Trollocs with this sword that he got from a peddler. He gets out of the house and like looks for Rand and meets up with him. But he is badly wounded. So Rand now has to take care of Tam and get him to safety. But he also needs supplies, so he puts Tam down and he heads back to the farmhouse to try and get supplies. He gets to the farmhouse, but he gets into a very strange altercation with a Trolloc. It's like talking to him, and it's saying that someone is coming to see him, and he basically just panics. He goes for his sword. The Trolloc does not like that, and he ends up killing this creature. Oh, and Rand also killed that Trolloc with the sword that his father got from a peddler. He did not get it from a peddler. I refuse to believe that he got it from a peddler. And then we move on to chapter 6, and chapter 6 gets very interesting because Tam starts to mutter random stuff. He seems to be in this kind of phased out state, and he starts revealing some interesting things. He starts to say a lot of just stuff, and a lot of it I think is going to be a lot more important, or it might be something that's interesting to come back to as I read further books. But one thing that was very important that he said seemed to imply that Rand is not actually his son, and that he found Rand as a baby. Yeah, it seems to imply that Tam found Rand like as a baby on a battlefield, potentially, because he's saying there's blood everywhere and he was trying to get away from all of this blood, and then he found a child, and then I think he was speaking as if he was speaking to his now deceased wife, and yeah, he basically was saying that he found this baby and that Rand would be a great name for it. So the chapter ends with Rand like completely, so he gets jumped in his house by like these hybrid beasts. He then finds his dad bleeding and wounded, potentially dying, and then he finds out that that might not even be his father. Oh, and he also kills for the first time. So we start on chapter 7, and Rand and Tam arrive back in Emond's Field, but it has been attacked. There are a couple of fires, people are kind of running around trying to help the injured. And Rand heads straight for Nynaeve because she is the sort of most educated person in the village in terms of medicine. He goes to her, she checks his father's wounds, and she deems him way too injured and basically says that she has to prioritize everyone else because he is far gone. So Rand panics, he goes to the mayor, Alvir, or Bran, and Bran says, you know what, let me just go to Nynaeve. And Rand says, I already went to Nynaeve. And then Bran goes, And then they basically put Tam down. Bran sort of recommends that Rand consider speaking to Lady Moiraine because she is an Aes Sedai, and he has heard that they have talents in healing. So Rand, very desperate, goes to Lady Moiraine because he is very hesitant to involve himself with an Aes Sedai. Apparently he and many others are very uncomfortable with their kind, so we don't really necessarily know why, but yeah, it's something to take note of. We hear quite a few things in this chapter that are a little scattered, but I just took note of them, so I want to bring them up. Master Luhan says this line, "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills." The hell does that mean? Moiraine apparently called ball lightning out of a clear night sky. Dope. And Master Lan was a whirlwind with a sword. This is a cool build-up for those two characters. I really like Lan. I mean, I expected Lan to be some sort of badass swordsman type guy. Build up these two characters that way. I think it's cool that like ball lightning is a thing, so I'm curious how Jordan's magic system works in terms of how she's able to do that, assuming that she did do that. But yeah, moving on to the rest of the chapter, Rand does go to Moiraine and asks for her help, but he basically says, I owe you one if you help him out. And she takes him up on that. And the chapter ends with her beginning healing Tam. We start chapter 8 with Moiraine healing Tam with the one power. Lan asks Rand about his sword. Wonder why? And he gives a name to the dark figure that Rand had seen previously, before he had arrived in Emond's Field. They are called... They have like 3 names. I'm pretty sure that they're referred to. Myrddraal, Halfman, and Fade. I believe Lan also refers to them as the Eyeless. I think he's referring to them when he says the Eyeless, but it could be someone else. Moiraine also uses something called an Angriel to heal Tam, so I don't know if it's like something that she's using to channel her like abilities through, or if it's doing something to enhance her powers, if it's doing something else. I'm not really sure because they haven't really explained how the powers work yet. Rand also tells Lan that he spoke to a Trolloc, and Lan seems more emotive than usual when he brings that up, which is saying a lot for that character, because I can tell that his character is basically going to be this for like the entire book. So after she's done healing Tam, Moiraine goes to Rand and tells him that she wants him to leave the village because so long as he's here, this village is basically in danger. She and Lan tell Rand that there were specific houses that were attacked when the Trollocs came. His home, the home of Mat Cauthon, and of Perrin Ibera, who is, I think he's going to be one of my favorite characters of this book. I really like Perrin. So she basically wants to take Rand, Perrin, and Mat and get them out of the village because she believes that someone is seeking a boy of a specific age that fits all 3 of their ages. And she doesn't know which one of these boys they need, and she believes that they don't know which one of those boys they are looking for. So she wants them out of the village as soon as possible so they can get them somewhere safer. And that place that they want to take them to, I believe, is called Tar Valon. My assumption is that one of them is the new dragon. I'm going to guess that it's Rand, but yeah, I'm guessing that the Dark One is trying to find the new sort of person who has been granted this title or whatever dragon represents, and he's just trying to get rid of him. Rand is obviously hesitant because he doesn't trust Aes Sedai, but he doesn't really have much of a choice. They want to leave in the middle of the night, which is pretty soon, so Rand basically runs to Tam because he wants to see Tam and figure out what he wants to do. But he's basically going to leave the village at this point. Rand goes to Tam, he basically falls asleep on Tam, and the next chapter starts, and Rand has like a crazy dream where he sees this bright white city. He sees a lot of crazy stuff. And then he wakes up. He talks to Tam for a bit, does a quick little recap with Tam, tells him what happened, and then he basically leaves. Lan comes up to him, tells him that they're not safe, and they just start to head on their journey. After a very large mob of villagers kind of gets in their way, Moiraine and Lan are basically being asked to leave the village as they're leaving the village. And Moiraine gets pissed at the way these villagers are speaking to them, so she does this crazy thing where she takes her scepter, spins it around, and these white flames start to spin around her, and she goes on this big sort of explanation about the origin of Two Rivers and the people of Two Rivers, and how they originate from this culture, or rather this old city called Manatherin. And after this, the villagers all kind of calm down, and Moiraine and Lan and the rest leave in peace. The 10th chapter starts, and we basically have our entire party until we get 2 more additions. Egwene joins our party. She deduces that they are basically going to leave and shows up to join them. I'm excited to see what Egwene kind of does in the story, because I'm a few more chapters past 10, and Egwene's got some interesting stuff going on with her, so I'm excited to see where that goes. And we get Tom Marilyn. I didn't expect the Gleeman to join, so I'm happy that the Gleeman is joining. Lan is hesitant, obviously, to have them join. I don't think he's really wanting them to join at all, but Moiraine, both times as they both join, basically just goes, "It is the pattern." She literally does that both times. Like Egwene comes in and she's like, "No, I want to leave Two Rivers. I can do this. Come on, let me join." And then Moiraine literally goes, "It is the pattern." Lan's like, "Okay." And then Tom shows up. He just I think he's on the roof or something, and he just drops down. He's like, "Aha! I would like to join as well." And Moiraine literally, "It is the pattern." I'm like, okay, alright, it's the pattern. Whatever the pattern is, let's do this. And right as the chapter is about to end, Rand looks up in the sky and he sees this winged, bat, dragon thing in the sky. And he points it out, and Lan just goes, "Oh yeah, that's a Drakkar." And Rand's just like, "What's that?" And he's just basically like, "Oh, it's just a massive dragon-like creature." And then the chapter ends. That's the first 10 chapters of Eye of the World. So far I'm liking it. I can see the parallels to Lord of the Rings, but I don't think it doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings. It still feels like its own fleshed out world. I think he's using them well. I think he's using them in a fun way, and I think that he is creating his own world at the same time, and we've barely scratched the surface of anything. I mean, I'm aware that there's 14 books, so I'm sure that there is so much happening. I mean, I know we've only scratched the surface with what's going to happen in Eye of the World, but I really like what I'm seeing so far. I'm excited to see what the next 10 chapters hold. But yeah, until then, I will see you guys on the next video. Like, share, subscribe, tell me what you think.